What's the worst thing you've seen happen at a wedding?
Experience 1. Best man starts off the speech with, "I've seen the groom with a lot of girls over the years." You know the cliche speech where it goes on to say, "But you're the best for him," etc., etc. Turns out the bride and groom were dating long before the best man even became a friend. Essentially outed him as a degenerate cheater. She was super pissed. Experience 2. The bride and groom got into a huge drunken fight after the rehearsal dinner. It escalated to include shouting and name-calling between both families, and then the wedding got canceled the day of. Experience 3. It started super late, it was super hot out, and the future father-in-law was wasted and left before it started. He then showed back up in a red bathrobe and his gun. Cops got called. It was a whole thing. Oh, and then after the reception we were all trying to convince one of our friends not to drive. He insisted he was fine. Drove his truck into the river. Experience 4. I went to a friend of mine's aunt's wedding. It was a second marriage for both of them, so they wanted something relaxed. They threw it on one of the family members' properties and had all the guests do grueling manual labor to get the property ready for the wedding. We were literally landscaping in the Texas summer. I was climbing trees to hang lights, we laid sod, we laid down stone for a walkway, and my friend's mom cooked food for days and made all of the floral arrangements. We were setting up tables and chairs, you name it. We worked from 6 a.m. until almost midnight for 3 days. Finally, the wedding happens and it's beautiful. I was actually really proud of what we had done. It looked professional. We go to cut the cake and the couple is nowhere to be found. They just left without telling anyone and went back to their hotel. I was offended by that because we had worked so hard for them and they didn't even stay for the entire wedding. We never got a thank you or any appreciation for it. Other people were upset too and took their gifts back before leaving. Experience 5. My brother's second wedding. For the first dance, the DJ played the wrong song for half a second before stopping and starting the right song. The bride disappeared for 2 hours afterwards because the wedding was ruined. Experience 6. I was supposed to be the best man at a friend's wedding. At 7:30 a.m., the morning of the wedding, the groom called and said the wedding was off. It wasn't going to happen. I never talked to or saw the guy again. He signed up for the army and within a few days he was just gone. Experience 7. I was at a wedding in rural Wisconsin and both the bride and groom were members of the local all-volunteer fire department. Almost everyone at the wedding proceeded to get quite drunk, except the bride, who doesn't drink. At some point, there was an emergency call to the fire department, not a fire, but a medical call. The wedding was not far from the fire station, so the bride rushed over and, along with one other volunteer who was on call, drove an ambulance to an emergency call. In her wedding dress. Experience 8. We got to the church and took our seats. The vibe was off, but didn't think much of it. Then the start time passed, and nothing happened, didn't think much of it. Finally, I said something to a friend next to us, something like,
Gee, this is late?
Yeah, it's terrible, isn't it?
Huh? What?
Oh, you didn't hear.
The entire wedding party got food poisoning from the rehearsal dinner the night before. One bridesmaid, then another, then siblings, parents, bride and groom, everybody. They had a small ceremony at the bride's parents' house. No church ceremony, but a short talk from the pastor, in part to kill time before the reception. They made a short appearance at the reception, but that was it. Just wholly unfair. Experience 9. At my friend's wedding, the flowers wilted, the wedding cake ended up on the floor, and some guy wrecked his Corvette in the parking lot of the church. A single car accident, ran over a talus curb and screwed up the door pretty good, impaired probably. Experience 10. The bride was dancing during the reception, fell and broke her left arm. Lots of pictures from the ER, the photographer went with them. When the doctor heard he'd be setting a bride's arm, he put on a suit. They worked hard to get the swelling down so she wouldn't have to have her brand new wedding ring cut off. Crazy. ETA, I was at the wedding party, I was 10, this was a long time ago. The bride was my aunt. The fall happened after dinner. Before they left for the hospital, the cake was quickly brought out for the bride and groom to cut. Everyone went on partying after they left. I haven't seen the pics since she got them back from the photographer. I remember pics of her and the doctor in the suit, my uncles in their tuxes doing wheelies in wheelchairs, and her red-rimmed eyes while cutting the cake. Experience 11. To begin with, there were sustained 40 below zero Fahrenheit temps, so a lot of guests did not attend at the last minute. The MOH and best man, who had just met the day before, disappeared for a bit, and the bride searched and found that they had used the groom's parents' van as a place to have intercourse. The problem was that maid of honor had just given birth to a baby a few weeks before and she was hemorrhaging. Bride left with maid of honor to go to the ER. In the meantime, a huge percentage of the guests started getting violently ill. As it turned out, the beef was tainted. The health department shut down the caterer some days later, and all guests had to be contacted to see who ate the beef. This is all first-hand factual info. I was there. I lived this. Thank God I ate the chicken. The couple divorced 18 months later. Experience 12. My wedding. Evening was wrapping up and I hadn't seen my new husband in a while. He had taken off to local bars to continue partying with friends. Without his new bride. My BIL, as advised by my heavily pregnant sister, escorted me to find him somewhere. We were in our mid-30s. I'm daily grateful for my sister and BIL in my life. And even more grateful X is long gone. Experience 13. The groom got appendicitis the night before, got it removed the morning of, and still showed for the wedding itself. She had to prop him up while they had their first dance. I was amazed he made it through, but it was really just such a wild and sad experience for both of them and cast a huge cloud over everything. They're divorced now. He ran off with an Instagram model/escort. They were my best friends. She's still my best friend, and I haven't seen her this happy before. I guess the appendicitis was an omen. Experience 14. I grew up in a ghetto in LA in a Mexican neighborhood. It was summer after 11th grade, and I went to a wedding reception for a Russian guy in the backyard of a house, my older brother's friend. His bride was about 17, blonde and pretty. She spoke no English and was brought over from the old country to marry him. He was 18 but seemed 30 and was always drunk. They both were very drunk and argued all day in Russian. The people had just started dancing in the garage and the bride grabbed my hand and pulled me to the dance floor. She danced too close and started grabbing my balls. I pushed her away several times and then left the dance floor. The best man came up and said,
Hey, I saw what happened.
I cut him off and said,
Nothing happened.
He said,
I know, and on behalf of Bill, I just wanted to thank you.
Things were getting chaotic, and I thought I was going to have to fight if I didn't leave soon. 20 minutes later, the groom was passed out at a table. I was leaving and walked past the garage and saw something terrible. The bride was on her knees blowing some guy, and a bunch of other guys were blocking the view laughing and waiting. I felt like throwing up. I never saw any of them again. That's the worst thing I ever saw at a wedding. Experience 15. The best man showed up at the reception and whacked out on something. It was more than just drunk. Proceeded to make an ass out of himself, and the groom babysat the guy all night to make sure he didn't do anything too terrible and missed his own reception. What the guy did when he wasn't being watched, made crude remarks to the groom's mom, whom he had known for better than 15 years, sexually assaulted the bride's aunt, like crotch grabbed her, made uncomfortable observations about the groom's cousin and her developing womanhood, made people leave due to his behavior and consequent assholery post-rejection, was told about that afterwards, and attempted to grope the bride's chest 5 minutes after he arrived, which is when the groom stopped drinking and knew it was going to be a problem. There were likely other things that were highly inappropriate that were never mentioned. But wait. There's more. After unsuccessfully trying to take his keys away, the jackass sneaks away from his babysitter and tries to drive home. Misses the road and instead drives around the building between the trees and into the field where the RVs are parked. Misjudged the width of the car and caused a ton of damage to the bride's cousin's trailer when he hit it with his mom's car that he'd borrowed. They finally get the keys away from him, and at this point, the bride is aware of what's happening and offers help. The groom and the bride's little brother were trying to hide it from the bride so it wouldn't ruin her night. Her family sees how upset she is by what's happening, and each one that sees her crying vows to beat the hell out of the guy for her. She constantly escorts family away to try to de-escalate. He fights with the cab driver, and the cab driver refuses to take him. After an hour of him causing a huge scene in front of the hall, the bride's uncle walks over and calmly talks to him, like think laid-back Hawaiian Island calm or smooth jazz kind of vibe, and basically talks him into the cab. The bride and groom pay for the cab and pay the driver more in a tip than the fare. When he was finally gone, it was time to pack up everything. The reception was over. The bride ate a piece of her wedding cake in a tiny back room sobbing while the DJ cleaned up. Missed the father-daughter dance, the mother-son dance, the bride and groom's first dance, bouquet toss, garter toss, and the fun of getting hammered with friends and family. Edit to add, this all happened in a span of about 3 hours. The reception started at like 7. It was a week after the destination part, and the best man showed up a couple of hours later and was loaded into the cab by 1:30 a.m. Experience 16. Drunk AF bridesmaid starts beating the crap out of someone with a shoe. The groom and a relative try to restrain her. The bridesmaid turns on them and absolutely rakes them with her saber-toothed claws, scratching the groom's face and shredding the relative's shirt. Bride comes charging in with a "Don't you touch my husband" war cry. The bride's a big girl and literally throws the bridesmaid out of the venue and into the parking lot before pouncing on her and feeding her a buffet of lefts and rights. The struggling bridesmaid gets her hands on the bride's bodice and, as she's flailing for her life, just rips it off her, Chippendale style. The bride barely notices as she continues to beat the crap out of the bridesmaid, tits flapping in the night air. The bride is eventually pulled off of the battered bridesmaid and brought back into the reception hall. Cops show up and haul the bridesmaid off to the drunk tank. The topless bride continues to storm around the reception hall with the groom and some other people trying to calm her down and cover her up. Every once in a while, she sits down and gets a jacket thrown over her, only to pop back up like James Brown and continue her rage, jacket fluttering to the floor to the horror of all who can't muster the willpower to look away. Hell of a wedding, that one. Experience 17. Nothing truly awful. Just a bit sad. My friend was very much a woman into her wedding, not a bridezilla, but she wanted a nice wedding. It was a big thing to her. She put a lot of effort into it, and it was nice, a bit overdone for my tastes, but it was nice. Until the evening. When the groom, who all her friends thought was an asshole, but what can you do, her choice, got absolutely plastered with his ex-squatty mates. Ended up we took her, very upset, back to our hotel and left him passed out in a pool of vomit on the dance floor for his mates to look after. They are still together, but I think that was a wake-up call for him as to how close he came to ruining it, and he's been a bit less of an asshole since then. They are still together and have kids now. But screw me, he came so close to screwing up his marriage on his wedding night.
We hope you enjoyed listening to today's stories. If you want to see more stories, check out these videos or check the links in the description for more videos. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And ring that notification bell.